What's going on, YouTube? Lawrence Owen here with an episode of Believe in Colts. And this is a live episode. We will be recording this to go on to the audio podcast. This is going to go live all over. We're going to sit here and go over the OTAs, right? We're going to go over news from OTAs about Anthony Richardson, about other players. We're going to talk about the gambling and Isaiah Rodgers. We're going to talk about some of the video clips that we've seen come out of OTAs and the lack of video clips for other stuff out of OTAs. And then, of course, we're going to answer a bunch of questions from the live chat. As I said, though, this is an episode of Believe. So when I get this started, I'm going to start as soon as the intro hits. It's going to be just like an episode of Believe. I'm going to have to go through and read my ad and everything else, do my normal talk, and then we'll get into the questions, right? So, guys, while you're here, please smash that like button, all right? We're still waiting on a co-host. Still out there looking for a second co-host. The Believe Network is looking long and hard to find the right guy to come in after Gerard Powers decided that, he just didn't have time to do it anymore. Appreciate you guys. And I see there's a few of you starting to walk in. So let's get started, right? Let's go ahead and hit this. 3, 2, 1.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cassidy, one of your Indianapolis Colts cheerleaders, and you're watching the Believe in Colts podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Believe in Colts. I'm Lawrence Owen, and today we're going to discuss the Indianapolis Colts OTAs, wrap up everything that's happened over the past couple weeks of OTAs, all 3 sessions, and it's going to be pretty interesting, right? I really do want to get into any questions or comments that a lot of you fans and listeners out there have. Obviously, we're doing this live, right? We're doing this live here on YouTube, so I will be getting to the live chat as well. But first and foremost, I got to say, I got to get this in here as quickly as I can. BetOnline is your number one source for all your championship finals info, stats, news, and scores. BetOnline is your sports intel headquarters this season, as we have you covered for all of your insider wager needs from basketball and hockey, MLB, UFC, and boxing. Get the latest odds and lines and the latest matchup reports for this year's NBA and Stanley Cup finals. The fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games, available to play right from your home. Get into the action today. Head over to the website or use your mobile device and join. Be sure to use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your 50% on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts. Now, today was National Friendship Day, all right? Now, that's a day that I actually enjoy. What's better than to have a guy who you could count on at all times. And some of the great things that I've seen online from the Indianapolis Colts on National Friendship Day was obviously Gardner Minshew and Anthony Richardson, showing their friendship out there on the field, giving each other high fives. Minshew, of course, got his hands behind him while Richardson's behind him and gives him double fives from behind his back. There was a couple of them giving each other hugs out there on the field. There was one picture. Oh my gosh. One of the pictures that I saw was actually Anthony Richardson jumping up in the air to give a double high five to Gardner Minshew. Gardner didn't jump, and it looked horrible. It looked bad. I mean, his knees was like at Gardner Minshew's chest. Gardner's like, it was pretty hilarious. But it's good to see these guys really rooting each other on, trying to help each other, especially Gardner being the guy he is. We noticed a lot of pressers out of OTAs over the past, 2 weeks. Most of them really focused on Anthony Richardson and his development, how he looks out there on the field. A lot of other questions about, Gardner Minshew and, how he's running the offense, and showing guys how to be a professional, especially Anthony Richardson, right? A lot of questions from different players, obviously. During their pressers, there was questions about Anthony Richardson and Gardner Minshew. Both offensive and defensive players were answering questions like this, right? EJ Speed was asked about Minshew and Anthony Richardson, and they were just sitting there talking, right? Talking about how the one thing that was big about Anthony Richardson is how that ball comes out of his hands, right? It looks so fluid, so quick, flick of the wrist, and that ball goes anywhere he wants it to go. And Minshew out there just, being a fun-loving guy, does things a little bit differently than most NFL quarterback veterans out there. But I kind of enjoy that, kind of the laid-back situation. Another thing that was talked about Anthony Richardson was his demeanor. They say he's a very quiet, humble guy, actually. He loves to celebrate and get excited, but he's quiet. He's not out there being a very demanding person out there on the field. Now, there's two ways of going about this. Now, apparently Andrew Luck was that way. I've heard multiple players talk about Andrew Luck's, rookie first couple seasons where Andrew was a quiet guy, led by example, expected the guys around him to be their best, but was still a very quiet, humble guy. Apparently Anthony Richardson has some very similar qualities about him. So let's see what happens. That's something that we could talk about. We can discuss. If you have any questions about stuff like that, either, any of the pressers that came on, feel free, drop them in there. Obviously, there is questions about guys that ain't out there right now, right? Josh Downs, dealing with his injury. Shaquille Leonard, Rigoberto Sanchez, loved his press conference as well. I thought that was very entertaining. And then, of course, the news of this past week where the Indianapolis Colts cornerback, Isaiah Rodgers Sr., is being investigated for gambling. Feel free, drop comments and questions about that as well. But right now, I have to say, when it comes to OTAs, Anthony Richardson has left the Indianapolis Colts, like the organization as a whole, not just coaches, but players, the brass, fans, hopeful, very hopeful. He looks much better than what he was advertised pre-draft by all these NFL draft experts, right? He looks way better. You see him going through footwork drills in these video clips coming out of OTAs, and he looks darn good. Darn good. It's pretty impressive. All right. And that's one thing that, a lot of people said that, he needed to work on was his footwork. That would help him with his accuracy. And his accuracy doesn't look terrible, right? Sure, there was some video clips of him making some nice throws, hitting the little target nets at different intervals on the field, whether short, intermediate, long. There was some where he missed it, maybe a little high or something. Obviously, quarterbacks are not going to hit every target. They're not going to make every throw. Even if there's not defenders there. I mean, no one can do that. Nobody. All right. But it's nice to see that Anthony Richardson is out there making throws when need to, even if he doesn't have pressure, even if there isn't guys out there defending the ball. We're going to see all that during training camp and preseason. All right. He's just working into himself right now. And I'm really excited about that. Right. He's taking gradual steps forward to being the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. And I absolutely love that. I want to shout out Larry Brown. He says, what's going on, Lawrence? Appreciate you, man. Donald Shelton says, I wish Downs could have got to work with Richardson more. They need reps together. It'll happen. All right. OTAs will come around, or OTAs is over with, but you still got training camp. That's a lot of snaps. All right. Then you got the time between now and training camp where the quarterback usually goes out, gets some guys together and throws around with them between now and then. Look, it's no big deal. All right. Everybody goes through some injuries. This isn't a major injury on Downs. They're going to get work together, and it'll happen. It's going to happen. Donald comes in with a great question on the light of what's going on with Rodgers Sr. Says, do you think that the Indianapolis Colts should go after a vet at cornerback? If so, who would you like to see them go after? I think they need to sit tight for a second, okay? Because remember, right now it's just the initial investigation, okay? And we do have a lot of youth on this team. We need to see where they're sitting at. I say if the Colts need to go get a vet, they'll know probably week 2 of training camp. Right about the time that, pads, that they replaced the shells for actual pads. At that point, after the first day, they can look and see how the corners are doing. And you'll immediately know, hey, do we need another guy, a vet back there? Or do we have some guys that we feel can come in and really fill those positions? Then obviously, like I said, it's still in the investigation process. Nothing's happened yet. The Indianapolis Colts aren't going to release Isaiah Rodgers until the NFL completes its investigation. And if he is found guilty and they drop a punishment on him, that's when they have to decide, whether they're going to release him or whether or not they're going to, keep him on. Who knows? We don't know what's going on yet. The Colts don't know what's going on yet. I say you just kind of have to be a little bit patient. There's guys out there. All right. And there's going to be guys out there a month from now when training camp starts. There's some guys I don't want. Again, you asked that question about, who would you like to see go after? Some guys I don't want to go after, like Marcus Peters. There's some guys who's just at this point in their career, they're not beneficial to the team, right? If Rodgers can't play next year, obviously we need to get somebody, I feel like, but not Peters, because he's never on the field. He's been injured the last 3 seasons. He's barely on the field at all. Let's get into another question. Tony Roberts says, yeah, he looked good. I believe we have a good year. I believe he's talking about, Anthony Richardson. So hypothetically, D. Lewis, what's up, man? Says, hypothetically, the Colts got moved to a new city. Would you still be a Colts fan or a fan of of another team? Well, first off, I don't like thinking about that. I don't see it happening, at least not anytime soon, right? I don't see the Indianapolis Colts moving anytime soon. But I've been a fan of the Indianapolis Colts for 30 years, ever since they came into the league. I'll stay a fan of the Colts, even if they get moved. Okay, it is what it is. But I don't see them getting moved anytime soon. Not with the brand new stadium and Irsay being where he is and stuff like that. So yeah, appreciate it though. Donald Shelton. Difference is Steichen is coaching him up. Not 2 or 3 different OCs in Florida and Richardson's time there. Plus, he didn't have a quarterbacks coach in Florida, right? It's not just Steichen, right? You got Jim Bob Cooter as his OC, and he's got a quarterback coach, and he's got an assistant quarterback coach. He's got an NFL vet who knows the system and knows how to play. He's got guys there. Anthony Richardson has plenty of guys there to help him along the way. Schralis is set himself up for a bad season for the Indianapolis Colts. He says this year is going to be painful. Anyone who thinks it won't be is just setting themselves up for even more pain. I don't know. I don't see how the Colts could have a worse than a 4-win season like they did last year. Okay. I feel like we got a lot more new people, new fresh look. Defense is still together. All the coaches on the defense looked great outside of the times that, they had to be on the field for too long. In the second half shows up and they end up giving up, 33-point lead or something like that. I mean, the Colts during that Vikings game, that was the defense and the special teams that got them that 33-point lead. The Colts offense didn't do jack, right? The defense and special teams did. And then the Colts offense could not do anything in the second half, and that's how the Vikings ended up winning that game. So I still have a lot of faith in the defense. The cornerbacks scare me a little bit, but we'll see how some of these corners, these young guys step up. It's their time to step up. They need to step up, right? I'm still got the Colts, even with Isaiah Rodgers, even if he doesn't play. I still have the Colts winning a minimum of 6 games. I say 6-9 is where I got the Indianapolis Colts right now. Let's get into some more questions. Wants to talk about, Shayla talks about, the Isaiah Rodgers betting. If he's betting on a Colts games, I like him, but he needs to be permanently banned for betting on Colts games. Whether he bet for or against. If I remember right, Ridley had, 6 bets, and some of them were actually on the Falcons, and he had a 1-year suspension. The sad thing is this coming right off the Calvin Ridley thing? And Isaiah had 100+ bets. We don't know for sure the full extent, but we'll see. We'll see. Larry Brown has got a little more hope than Shiralis. He says the Colts aren't going to be as bad as some people talk. Again, in that situation, Indianapolis Colts have got opportunities. They've got a lot of talent on this team. But cornerbacks, the cornerback room, that is more of a team thing than an individual thing, with Gus Bradley running a lot of zone. Now, he could make this a little easier, I believe, by going a little bit more man and having the safeties run free zone, right? Especially with Blackman now at strong safety. I didn't like Blackman playing nickel at the end of last year. Okay, I didn't like it. I'll be perfectly honest. I would still prefer to have Kenny Moore being our number 1, which he should be, and then having, whoever wins between the rookies and, well, to be honest, our second-year guy as well. We have a second-year cornerback who was a kick returner last year, who was given the green light, if you remember right, to do kick returns right out the back of the end zone, and he was making the most of that. But yeah, secondary is a little bit worrisome. I think the offense will be fine because there's no film. On, I mean, yeah, you could go look at the Eagles and their offense last year, but that Eagles offense is nothing. You don't have the same guys as the Colts have, right? Quarterbacks are different. The receivers are different. The running backs are different. Different offensive coordinators. Remember, the offensive coordinator is required to script the first 2 drives of the offense. So that's not going to be Steichen putting together the first 2 drives of the games. It's going to be Jim Bob Cooter. So that's going to be an interesting situation there, unless Steichen does things a little differently. I know he'll be calling the plays the rest of the game, but I'm curious if Jim Bob will be the guy responsible for, scripting. That'll be something nice because Jim Bob's been around a while. Let's get into some more stuff in here. Do we lose draft picks if a player gets suspended? No, we won't lose draft picks. This is a player-only situation, okay? If the player gets suspended, he gets suspended. Unless it's found out during the investigation that not only was he found guilty, but someone in the organization was helping him do it or was okaying it or something like that, then that could lead to something bad. That could lead to a fine and a loss of draft picks and things of that nature. But that's what would have to happen. It would have to be, the Colts knew about it and or endorsed and or helped in him making bets. So all right. Yes, Donald, the secondary for the Indianapolis Colts defense is going to have to step up. As a whole, they're going to have to. Last year, they played fan-freaking-tastic. I think the secondary played great, especially in the first half of games. Now, when you're running and making plays, afterwards you get a little bit tired. I understand how the defense could fall off. The addition of Darious Leonard will help a ton because he's a turnover machine. That'll help keep the Colts defense off the field a little bit more, right? You're looking anywhere between 12 and 15 turnovers a year that you're missing with Darious Shaquille Leonard being out. Well, that's almost a turnover a game, right? Between forced fumbles and interceptions. I mean, come on. So that'll help out a ton. But, I mean, we did lose Stephon Gilmore. Good possibility we lose Isaiah Rodgers. I mean, we lost Rodney McLeod. There was some really good talent that we've already lost and possibly will continue to lose depending upon what happens with this whole gambling situation. But we'll see what happens, man. We'll see what happens. Yeah, that was Dallas Flowers. Yeah. I don't think everything is on Steichen, Tony. I don't think everything is on Steichen. He brought an offensive group together and kept Reggie Wayne, right? We need to see Tony Sperano Jr. We need to see serious improvement across the offensive line. We need to see Reggie Wayne and these wide receivers step up. Quarterbacks coach, very important situation there as well. Plus Steichen and the OC. I mean, it's on the whole team. It's not just one guy, right? Even just the head coach. We need the whole team. There's a lot of big questions. There's a lot of stuff coming out where people talk about Jonathan Taylor, right? Larry talks about he sees Jonathan Taylor getting signed soon, right? Due for an extension. Him and Michael Pittman Jr. both up for extensions right now. Now, we can talk about that. I don't know if Jonathan Taylor is going to get extended right away this year. Right now, it's what, about $10.5 million to franchise tag him? It would be what, a little over $20 million to franchise tag Michael Pittman Jr.? I would say we should probably try to get Michael Pittman Jr. signed first. I do want to keep Jonathan Taylor, and if he's willing to make a sign somewhere in the $12 to $13 million a year range, that's about as max as I could go. He's more of a $15 million a year, so he would be taking a bit of a hometown discount to sign a $12 to $13 million a year contract, but we'll see if that works out. I think Michael Pittman Jr. needs to be signed first, though. And I don't see Michael Pittman Jr. making over $20 million a year. That's what his expectations are right now, around $20 million. And I see more of a 17 because that's about where he's played, about $17 million a year. Some of you might look at $17 million and go, wow, that's a lot of money for a number 2 wide receiver. Well, first off, he's been the number 1 guy for the Colts. And he's been dealing with a different quarterback every year, right? In a situation that's not been good for him. And 2, $17 million is not a lot of money in today's NFL. There's, I think, 20 players that make more than $17 million at wide receiver in the NFL, 20 or more. I mean, come on, right? You got guys, I think you got 10 guys that make 22 or more. I think there's 10 wide receivers that make 22 or more million a year at wide receiver. I think if we can get him for 17, I'd be good with that. I'd be good with that. At least that's my thought process. But we'll see how that works out. I think there's a few things that we can discuss still left on the board coming out of OTAs, because this is basically, you remember, this is an OTA wrap-up episode. So if you have any questions or comments, you've seen some of the pressers, want to say something about something that you saw or heard, I do get a little frustrated with media when they know they're not going to get answers for a specific question, yet they still ask the same question. Like, obviously, I know that the gambling thing is the big hit right now. But you know you're not going to get any answers. The coach comes out and says, this is what I'm going to say about the gambling situation. I'm not going to say anything else about it. Then there's 4 or 5 questions about the gambling situation right afterwards. And, you know, they're not getting blood out of a turnip because he's already said he ain't going to answer questions about it. So what do they do after that? Players come out. They start hammering the players about the questions. You're not going to get much out of them either. You know, there is no doubt in my mind, if Steichen is saying he's not answering questions, he's told the players, keep your lips sealed, right? I mean, that's common sense. And as soon as a player answers a question about that situation in a bland, vanilla way, go to your next question. You see someone over there that already asked a question about that, and you know, and you see the response and the reaction from the player, and you know in your head, you know they've been told you can't answer these. Don't waste a question about something you know you're going to get a vanilla answer to. Go ask them a question that people want to know about. All right. That you know is going to get something out of more than we're told about don't gamble. So I don't. And that's all I got to say about that. You know, I mean, come on, guys. That's my thought process on it. You know, once I realize that, I'm going straight to the next question that has nothing to do with that, because I want some material to come out of it, right? I need some content. That's what my job is about. Even the media guys, that's their job, is to get content for whatever media they work for, whether it's national, local, you know, blogging, I don't, whatever, or you're just me. I don't want a 15-minute video on YouTube that the Colts post out that should have been 15 minutes. It was 5 minutes because it was 5 questions, basically asking the same stinking question that, we met the quota of 10 questions for this player, but half of those questions were, I'm not going to answer that. I'm just here so I don't get, fined. Come on, guys. We need some content. Let's get into here. Let's get into the questions. Let's talk in here. How do you feel about the depth at corner if Rodgers is suspended for a year? Scott S. I don't know yet because they're so young, right? Outside of Kenny Moore, you got a guy who has 100 and some snaps in Dallas Flowers, and then the rest are basically rookies. So when I go to training camp, that's when I want to see what I'm looking at. All right. During team activities, that's where I'm going to be getting an eye. That's when I'm going to know where the depth is. I was talking about that earlier. I think we do need to sign a guy. What kind of quality? Is it just going to be a vet for there just to be a vet, to have veteran leadership? Because if that's the case, we got Kenny Moore. Okay? We don't need vet leadership at the cornerback room because we have Kenny Moore sitting there. He's a veteran leader. All right. If we're going to sign someone, it's going to be because we need the help. And you ain't going to know we need the help until they start playing in team activities. That's my thought. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a half an hour. That's about a general episode for Believe in Colts. So I appreciate all of you. Thanks for coming in. Don't forget to smash the like button and share this to your favorite social media. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're going to be listening to this later on whatever audio site that you listen to, make sure you share that and download and all that neat stuff. Leave a comment. If you're listening to this on iTunes, drop a rating and a comment about the show. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, I'm Lawrence Owen for Believe in Colts, brought to you by Bet Online. And as usual, go Colts.
Do you believe?